First, we have the presidential address by our IDS CKK president, Dr. Anigesh. Good morning, everyone. ഇന്നൊരു നല്ലൊരു കേരള പിറവി ദിനത്തിൽ തന്നെ ഇന്ന് ഒരു വെബിനാർ നടത്താൻ പറ്റി വളരെ സന്തോഷം. WDC ഒത്തിരി ലൈവ്ലി ആയിട്ട് വീണയും ഭാഗ്യലക്ഷ്മിയും ഒത്തിരി രജിസ്ട്രേഷൻസും കാര്യങ്ങളും എല്ലാം ഭയങ്കര ലൈവ്ലി ആയിട്ട് സ്പീഡപ്പ് ചെയ്ത് നമുക്ക് എത്തിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. So we're looking forward for a wonderful webinar, and first we have the presidential address by President IDS CKK, Dr. Anigesh.
Thank you, Dr. Nithin. Good morning, everyone. My Kerala Pravi wishes to all who are participating in today's webinar. This is our 10th CD program and 6th webinar, and we have already conducted 4 CDs before this COVID-19. As you all know, IDS CKK was always there in forefront regarding the COVID care support given to our members. During these hard times, we had given free PPE kits and gloves and N95 masks at a subsidized rate for our members from our society. We have supported our members by providing COVID-19 insurance scheme. We had tie-up with hospitals in Kottayam, and many of our members who turned COVID positive got excellent treatment and support from these hospitals. We also had tie-ups with labs like Dynamo Labs to provide antigen and RT-PCR tests at a subsidized rate for our members and their families. Also, we have made agreements with certain companies to provide clinical disinfection and sanitization for our members. Having sharing all these, now let me enter into the duty of welcoming all the dignitaries. First of all, let me welcome today's faculty, Dr. Liba Verghese, who is an expert in microendodontics and a very well-known speaker. We are proud that Dr. Liba is an active member of IDS CKK. I welcome Dr. Liba to this webinar.
Thank you, Doctor.
Next, our chief guest is none other than Dr. Millie James, who is WDC president of IDA Kerala State. Dr. Millie is a good friend of IDS CKK. Before COVID-19, we had conducted a road safety awareness program and a motor rally by our CDH wing. Dr. Millie was the chief guest, and she had supported us in every possible manner. Thank you, Dr. Millie, and welcome to this webinar.
Thank you, Doctor.
I also welcome our branch WDC representative, Dr. Veena and Dr. Bhagyalakshmi to this webinar.
Thank you, sir.
Next, I welcome our ever-active secretary, Dr. Nithin Joseph, and our dynamic CD chairman, Dr. Nithin Pradap, to this webinar. Last but not least, I welcome each one of you who are participating in today's webinar. I'm happy to inform you that we have got 300 plus registration for this program. There are participants from outside Kerala and even from North India. So thank you all. Wish everyone a happy and a fruitful learning. Jai IDA, Jai CKK. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anigesh. Now we have a felicitation by Dr. Millie James, President IDA Kerala State Women's Wing.
Thank you, Dr. Nithin. Thank you, Dr. Anigesh, for inviting me for the program. I really appreciate this honor. ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഡോക്ടർ ലീബയുടെ പ്രസന്റേഷൻ കേൾക്കണമെന്ന് നല്ല ആഗ്രഹം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, രക്ഷയില്ല. ഐ വിൽ ഹാവ് ടു ലീവ് ആഫ്റ്റർ ദിസ് ഇനോഗ്രൽ സെഷൻ ആസ് ഐ ഹാവ് ഡ്യൂട്ടി. ആക്ച്വലി ഞാൻ IDS CKKയില് പ്രോഗ്രാമിന് വന്നിരുന്നു. അത് ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാൽ എനിക്ക് വളരെയധികം സന്തോഷമുള്ള ഒരു കാര്യമായിരുന്നു. ഒരു ഡ്രൈവ് ഡൗൺ. It was a beautifully organized program, and I congratulate the office bearers, that is President Dr. Anigesh and Secretary Dr. Nithin, for the wonderful coordination, and I congratulate especially Dr. Veena for organizing the whole program so beautifully. And ഈ ഒരു വെബിനാറിന്റെ തന്നെ ഇത്രയധികം പാർട്ടിസിപ്പേഷനും രജിസ്ട്രേഷനും വരുന്നതെല്ലാം ഈ എസ്പെഷ്യലി ഫാക്കൽറ്റിയുടെ ആ ഒരു കരിസ്മ തന്നെയാണ്. നെക്സ്റ്റ് ഇസ് നമ്മുടെ WDCയുടെ ഒരു ടയർലെസ് ജോബാണ്. Really congratulate. I would love to get the link of this program anyway afterwards. Unfortunately, I'll have to leave after this. I wish you all the best. And Dr. Liba, have a wonderful session, and I wish you all a happy Kerala Pravi. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Millie ji. Now, welcome Dr. Veena Krishnan for a felicitation. WDC representative Idea Kerala, IDCKK. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Nitin. എല്ലാവർക്കും കേരളപ്പിറവി ആശംസകൾ. A warm good morning to one and all. There has been n number of webinars since the outbreak of this global pandemic, yet we are glad to see such huge participation today. When WDC CKK planned for a webinar in endodontics, there was no better option other than our own member, Dr. Liba Verghese, as the faculty. So we are privileged to have this incredible personality today, whose dynamism we are going to witness in the next 1 hour. And needless to say, this will benefit each one of us in our day-to-day practice. And on behalf of WDC CKK, I welcome all the participants and wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Veena. Now I call upon Dr. Nitin Pratap, our Dynamic CD chairman, for the introduction of the faculty. Welcome, Nitin.
Okay, so I'll be giving a very brief introduction about Dr. Liba Verghese, who is already a Central Kerala Kottayam branch member. So she completed her BDS with first rank from Government Dental College, Calicut in 2006, and then she got her MDS in Conservative Dentistry and Endodontics from Government Dental College, Trivandrum in 2011. So Dr. Liba is one of the pioneers of microscopic enhanced dentistry in Kerala. She is an expert in microendodontics and has treated complex endodontic cases with the aid of dental operating microscope. So she is a renowned speaker in the field of dentistry and has been invited as a speaker to several CD programs by Indian Dental Association and many dental colleges in Kerala. So she enjoys sharing her knowledge with fellow dentists and regularly conducts skill enhancement program. So Dr. Liba has published several articles in scientific journals and regularly shares her cases on social media. She is happily married to Dr. Rajesh George and is blessed with 2 kids, Edwin and Daniel. So I kindly invite Dr. Liba Verghese to start with the webinar. Over to Dr. Liba Verghese. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nitin. We'll start. We'll start. So over to Dr. Liba for your session.
Thank you, Dr. Anukesh, Dr. Nitin Pratap, and Dr. Nitin Joseph, both of you. Actually, we have been lucky this time to have such a dynamic leadership for IDA CKK. And even during this COVID lockdown, CKK was never locked down actually. We were very active and like all bubbly, even though clinics were not opening, all of us were still in contact with each other, thanks to the office bearers of the Central Kerala branch. And I would especially like to thank Veena. She's such a beautiful, cute little girl, and she's so efficient. Oh my God, WDC leadership with Veena is like 100% secure. And thank you, Dr. Millie, for being here, even though for a short time. Your dynamism is evident even if you are here only for a few seconds. You just energize the whole place and then you leave. So thanks a lot. And we are really, the whole of Kerala is really indebted to our doctors who are working with the health department. We know how much overloaded with work you are, and still you're happily doing everything, double or 4 times what you've been doing. We can't even imagine what you are going through, and hats off to you. So with this, let us start. Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, and thank you all, dear participants, dear doctors who have come here on Sunday morning. Happy Kerala Piravi wishes to all of you. This is such a beautiful morning, November 1st, sunny morning. Thank you all for being here at 11 o'clock on a Sunday. This just shows like how much you support us. So I'd like to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And now let us start. So our today's topic is post-endodontic restorations, as you all know. This topic was suggested by me only when Veena contacted me. But then I thought that it should have been better if we had called it restoration of endodontically treated teeth. Somehow post-endodontic restorations sound very generic, and when you say restoration of endodontically treated teeth, it conveys a message like how to best restore a tooth on which a root canal has been done. What is the best method to restore a tooth? So from so many years, we have been doing root canals and then we have been placing crowns. We never even think twice about doing a crown on a tooth that has undergone a root canal. But nowadays, concepts are changing. A lot of people are coming with new ideas, basically all of which are intended to to give the tooth a longer life. Okay, so even though we give crowns to teeth that are endodontically treated, they break and come to us, right? So why does that happen? And we never even think of it, that why did it break, or what was the failure because of, or what went wrong. We never think of it like that. What do? There's just a root stem there. We just extract the root stem and maybe replace it with some sort of a prosthesis. So this is what I am here to talk about today. I want you all to think differently. I want you all to think out of the box from today onwards about how to best restore a tooth that has been endodontically treated. There are several options other than a crown. Okay, so these are the questions that we should be asking ourselves. Do all teeth need crowns after root canals? What we do, we never even think twice about chopping the whole tooth off and giving a crown on top of it, and then it still breaks. Okay, why do teeth with crowns fracture? That is another question that this guy is thinking. So we should be asking ourselves, even though we give crowns, then why does this fracture? So a crown is never a foolproof guarantee of not fracturing. Okay, then where do we need posts? In which type of teeth do we need posts? And if a post is indicated, then whether it should be a metal post or a fiber post or a custom or cast post, how do you choose between which post to put in? And even after we do a post and core, we think that the tooth has been strengthened, even then it breaks. So why does it break? What is the cause of fracture? And why do we do all this? Basically, what is the difference between a normal tooth and a tooth on which a root canal has been done? Does endodontic treatment actually weaken the tooth? So these are the questions that we should be asking ourselves, and unfortunately we don't. The main reason is because crowns are, I hope there are no non-dentists here, crowns are one of the biggest income makers for us, right? They bring in the maximum amount of revenue for any ordinary dental clinic. Now, of course, the implants are there, but before the implants came in, crowns were the bread and butter for each and every dentist. And now we have to think how we can, earn the same income at the same time providing something better than a crown to the patient, which elongates the life of the tooth for the patient, and the patient is also happy and the dentist is also happy. So this is what I want you all to change in your mindset. Okay, so coming to the last question first, that is, what is so special about endodontically treated teeth? So earlier there were so many concepts about these studies. Earlier we used to say that when a tooth is endodontically treated, it loses its moisture content. The water part of the tooth is lost, and so it becomes brittle. So this was a study that was done, and they analyzed the moisture content or water content in teeth that were endodontically treated and that were not endodontically treated. And it was found that Vital Dentine had a moisture content of 12.35%, while Dentine from endodontically treated teeth has a moisture content of 12.10%, which is not significantly different from each other. Okay, so what does this mean? This means that the moisture content in an endodontically treated tooth is not very much reduced than that from a tooth that is not treated. So this whole funda goes into the dustbin. Okay. Now, the next argument of why the tooth weakens is because of reduction in tooth stiffness. We used to say that when you do a root canal on a tooth, the tooth stiffness or the strength of the tooth is gone. So again, they did a study, and the conclusions that they made were that endodontic procedure alone will reduce the stiffness of a tooth by only 5%. See, 5%, 100% becomes 95%. Not a big difference. And when you do other restorative procedures on the tooth, that is, if you do an MOD cavity preparation, you're not doing a root canal, you're just doing a mesio-occlusal distal cavity preparation that reduces the stiffness of the tooth by 60%. So which is more destructive? Root canal is not destructive. A simple cavity preparation could be more destructive than a root canal. So, and if you lose a marginal ridge, if the tooth loses a marginal ridge, then it contributes the greatest amount to the loss in stiffness of the tooth. So whenever possible, an intact marginal ridge in posterior teeth and in anterior teeth, the cingulum should be intact. Is preferable to maintain the strength of the tooth. Okay, so this is what weakens the tooth. What does weaken the tooth? Prior restorative procedures or caries or whatever. So basically, loss of tooth structure before endodontic treatment. Most of the teeth that go in for a root canal treatment have already been weakened by caries or fracture or previous restorations, and that leads to the loss of strength. Okay, then our access cavity preparation could increase cuspal flexure. Okay, suppose it is a premolar and you're doing an access cavity preparation through the middle of the tooth. So there are two cusps on both sides of the access cavity, the buccal and the palatal cusp. It may flex a bit. So that is one theory that was put forward. And then when the tooth loses its nerve supply, when you do a root canal, there is a lot of loss of the protective feedback mechanism when the patient chews. So maybe they could be, chewing more hard stuff and ending up in the tooth breaking. So that is another theory that was proposed. So these are the reasons that why the endodontically treated tooth is weakened. And then when we restore such a tooth, what we have to keep in mind is we have to give the strength back to the tooth so that the patient can chew everything. Like you have done a root canal on a lower molar, and you can't expect the patient to not chew on that tooth. We can't tell him to chew on the second molar and the third molar, and to chew on the first premolar and the second premolar, not to chew on the first molar, which is in between. So the patient has to chew with all the teeth together, and we have to find a method to enable him to do that. So what we are going to discuss today is completely an evidence-based discussion, and I'll be covering different aspects of post-endodontic restorations today. What I aim to do is to give you certain principles or newer concepts which you should keep in mind while restoring endodontically treated teeth. So these are the different headings that we are going to discuss today. Number one is treatment planning. So we are not going to discuss the things that we do after obturation. We are going to start way before that, when you even see the patient. We are going to tell him to do an endodontic treatment. That is where we are going to start. So the first will be treatment planning. Then we'll discuss about coronal seal, which is very important. Then we'll discuss about pose and the kinds of pose and how and why you should put them in. And another very important point is biologic width, or the periodontal part of our post-endodontic restoration, which most of us tend to ignore. Then different core build-up materials and what should be used as compared to what is being used currently. And of course, the ferrule, or what we believe strengthens the tooth. Okay, so these are the headings that we are going to discuss, and a lot of it, and a lot of other things are also going to come in between, which I couldn't, just put into one of these headings. So let's start rolling. First is treatment planning. See, whenever you propose a root canal to a patient, you should begin with the end in mind. That is, even before you're going to do a root canal, you should have an idea of how you're going to restore this. What is going to be the final restoration for this tooth? Are you going to put a post in? What kind of a post? Are you going to do a crown? Are you not going to do a crown? Are you going to do an onlay or an overlay? Or are you going to just overlay the cusp with composite? So you have to have an idea about how you're going to finish even before you're going to start. Then only you can do a proper justice to the patient. So see, these are the reasons why the patient comes to you for a root canal. So first of all, you look at the extent of the caries. Why the patient is coming? Is it a caries or is it a fracture? If it is a caries, the extent, especially the gingival or apical extent of the caries. And if it is a fracture, again, the apical extent of the fracture, whether it is a horizontal fracture or a vertical fracture or an oblique fracture, it is a vertical fracture. Till where does it go? Does it involve the pulp chamber roof or does it involve the pulp chamber floor? There are so many questions that you need to ask. Then the restorability of the tooth is assessed by looking at whether you can isolate that margin. You know, when you have these deep class 2 caries, whether you will be able to isolate the most apical or gingival part of the margin. That is the biggest question that you need to answer. Whether you will be violating the biologic width. So if you are going to get into the biologic width of the tooth, what else can you do so that you know, the tooth doesn't end up with inflammation? Then you have to look at the crown root ratio, whether this tooth has got any gingival recession or even pockets. So, you know, the clinical crown and the anatomical crown could be different, or the clinical crown and the clinical root and the anatomical root length could be different. Anatomical is still the cemento-enamel junction, but the clinical is where the alveolar bone stops. Only that much of support is there for that tooth. So if the crown root ratio is altered, it's not going to stay. Whatever prosthesis you give, it's not going to stay. It will all just become mobile and end up in the bucket. Then you have to look at the occlusal function of the tooth, whether he has any, you know, occlusal disorders, whether he's a grinder, and whether it is an anterior tooth or a posterior tooth even, because anterior tooth occlude differently with their opposing teeth as compared to posterior teeth. Posterior teeth have this more of a vertical action, and anterior teeth have more of a lateral action coming onto them. So it has the final restoration has to be decided based on what kind of occlusion the tooth is in, and of course the periodontal health, because you can build a building only on a sound foundation. Okay, you cannot build it on water or, you know, mobile teeth. So these are the two pillars of post-endodontic restorations, or, you know, any restoration. So even if you don't remember anything from today's webinar, I would request you to remember just these 2 points. One is coronal seal and the other is pericervical dentine. Why are these so important, and why do I like to stress on these 2 points as, you know, the pillars of restorative dentistry? I'm going to explain in the future slides. So coming to coronal seal, which is also one of the main headings which I showed you in the beginning. Coronal seal prevents ingress of microorganisms and nutrients into the root canal system from the oral cavity and also from the periapical region. Okay, so you have to give a proper coronal seal. Then we all know that we can never sterilize a root canal 100% because of our instrumentation and disinfection protocol. Some bacteria always remain in the canal. So with our obturation and our coronal restoration, what we aim to do is to entomb these bacteria inside the root canal so that they are not able to communicate with the external environment and cause another infection. Okay, so the coronal seal has to do these 2 things. So that kind of coronal seal has to be given, not just any leaking temporary restoration. So this has been proven several times, and that all temporary filling materials leak. Okay, so what does that mean? What most of us do is we do the obturation and then we put a temporary restoration on top of it and send the patient. Since we know that all temporary materials leak, there is no need to delay permanent restoration after obturation. Sometimes if there is a periapical lesion, what a lot of doctors do is they delay the permanent restoration. Actually, there is no need to do that, because if you're delaying the permanent restoration, you're actually causing more leakage into the root canal, and that is why the lesion may not be healing. So try doing this. As soon as you obturate, give a permanent restoration, then call the patient back after 3 or 4 months, because 3 months is the minimum it takes for any change to be evident in a radiograph. Okay, and then you will observe that the periapical lesion has healed, not because all of the bacteria have been eliminated by us, but because whatever bacteria is remaining has been entombed inside that tooth. The tooth has become a tomb for the bacteria, and they cannot cause an infection anymore. And suppose you have a post space prepared, you better put a non-leaking restoration on top of it, or you just do the post and code immediately, so that you protect the pore space. Pore space is a potent space where the bacteria can form a colony. So restore the pore space as soon as possible. Okay. And if you cannot, like you don't have time, like if it is class 2 KDs in which you need to do a deep margin elevation and deep margin acquisition and all, you don't have time to do that in the same visit. What you can do is an orifice barrier technique. That is, you just etch the floor of the access cavity and you put flowable composite on the root canal orifices, and then on top of that you put your temporary filling, so that the root canals remain uninfected. Okay, so this is clear flowable composite in the root canal orifices, and the rest of it will be restored in another visit. So this is one thing that all of us can do. It takes only maybe 10 seconds. This can be done. So if you are not able to restore, give a permanent restoration in the same visit, you can do this. Okay. Now moving on to pericervical dentine. This is something very important, very important. Now, what is pericervical dentine? See, the most valuable tissue for a tooth is its dentine. Okay, the occlusal enamel can be lost and it can be restored by anything like composites or ceramics, whatever. The root apex, you can remove it during an apicectomy, and you can do a retrofill, and the tooth will stay. Nothing will happen to the tooth. But the pericervical dentine, the dentine that is in and around the alveolar crest, is the most precious part of the tooth. If you lose any of the survival of the tooth depends on how much of pericervical dentine is left after, whatever your procedures. So this is the pericervical dentine that is 4 millimeter above and 6 millimeter below the alveolar crest. This was defined by these two stalwarts of modern dentistry, Dr. David Clark and Dr. John Kaduli. This is the paper. This is the scientific paper which they published in the year 2010. And after this paper was, the new era in dentistry started when we stopped doing crowns for all the teeth that we did root canals. This is where it all started, I must say. When we started thinking about pericervical dentine, we even stopped using your Protable Universal files. Why? There was nothing bad with Protable Universal, except that they removed a lot of pericervical dentine from inside the root canal. So this was the paper. This was the event that revolutionized modern dentistry. So if you're interested, you can download it and read it. It's not lot of scientific jargon. Very simple. It was published in the journal OE, Oral Medicine, Oral Surgery, Oral Pathology, and Endodontics. This is one journal, multi-specialty journal, and you can download it. And I presented this journal as a journal club article when I was doing my post-graduation. I think this was my last journal club, and actually somehow from inside, I'm proud of having presented this in my journal club, and being associated with this in such a small way. That is it. So this is one picture that I have taken from that journal, which shows you where the pericervical dentine is actually located. And then see, this is one root canal which has been done, and when you use a lot of orifice openers, which had been advocated very vigorously in the past years, when you use a lot of orifice openers to achieve that straight line access, what happens is the root canal becomes very widened from inside. So you're losing a lot of pericervical dentine in this area. And then again, while making the access cavity preparation, this mesial part had been gouged by the dentist. So again, he lost some pericervical dentine over here. And now imagine this, I have drawn this blue crown. So when you're putting this crown on top of the tooth, you are doing a crown preparation with your chamfer margins on both these sides, and you have lost this much of pericervical dentine also. So after all these procedures, what is the total amount of pericervical dentine that is left with the tooth? Only this much, maybe less than a millimeter on this side, and maybe 1 millimeter, not even 1 millimeter on the other side. So this is the dentine that takes all the stresses and all the flexion when the tooth is being chewed upon. So the less it is, the weaker the tooth is. Okay. So instead of the crown, if you had done an onlay, the pericervical dentine would have remained there, the entire amount of it that was present after the root canal, and the tooth resists fracture better. So this is the reason why even after doing crowns, some teeth break and come to you, because the tooth has been hollowed out from inside the root canal, and then you do a crown preparation and you lose whatever tooth structure is left on the outside. What remains is a crown on a filling, and when the patient bites something hard on it, the crown and the filling will just fracture off and the root stem stays below that. Okay. So this is the reason why these teeth with crowns fracture, and there are ways that we can avoid this. We can let the patient chew on his own tooth for a longer period of time than what we have been seeing these days. Okay, so Dr. David Clark and Kadami suggested this kind of an access. This is their the access design, where for visibility you can bevel the enamel over here. This is called the Calla Lily preparation. Then you can preserve the pulp chamber roof corners over here. These are called sockets. And then you do minimally invasive endodontics, so that more amount of pericervical dentine is preserved. Okay, so this is what they suggested, and this is the reason why rotary files with lesser taper started coming in, as opposed to ProTaper Universal. So these are some of my access cavities which I tried to prepare, keeping in mind the principles given in this journal article. So this was a retreatment actually, and then even then I could, there is Calla Lily preparation over here, and I could preserve considerable amount of pericervical dentine over here. Again, in this tooth, see, my access cavity is only this much. This tooth has both mesial and distal caries, which I prefer to restore separately. Okay, and see, so much of pericervical dentine could be preserved because of this kind of an access cavity preparation. I had both MB1, MB2, distal buccal, and palatal canals because this kind of an access cavity preparation, even though I am doing it, all my orifices are visible through the access cavity, and I didn't have to compromise on my endo for conserving the tooth. So if I had connected all these cavities, I would have lost all these dentine. This is healthy dentine which could be preserved. So these are some things that we can do. For incisors also, they suggested not to involve the cingulum, because cingulum is the strongest part in an anterior tooth. You just involve the incisal edge, okay, so that you get a straight line access. What we have been taught in traditional dental school is that you involve the cingulum and then you take your GG gauge plated drill and you even out that projection in the part of the cingulum to get a straight line access into the root canal of an anterior tooth. Instead of that, if you involve the incisal edge, only half of the incisal edge, okay, only the lingual half of the incisal edge is involved, and the labial half remains intact, so that acts as a reference point, and then you get a straight line access to the apex. You do the root canal and you can restore it. This tooth doesn't even need a crown, okay? No need for a crown. Why do you need a crown? So the point I want to stress is that each and every endodontic procedure from the beginning, from the access cavity preparation to obturation, must aim to conserve whatever healthy dentine is left with the tooth. Okay, we just treat the diseased part and we let the healthy part remain. That is what I want to convey. Okay, now moving on to posts. Okay, a lot of dentists, especially in the West, they put posts into all the teeth that have been treated endodontically. They believe that a post strengthens the tooth, but actually the purpose of a post, the one and only purpose of a post, is to retain the core material. What does that mean? If the tooth has enough of tooth structure to retain the core material by itself, it doesn't need a post. Okay, only if the core cannot be retained inside the cavity, then only you give a post which anchors the core material into the root canal. That is the only purpose of a post. There is no other purpose for a post. So molars usually have large pulp chambers and multiple canals. Okay, so in almost 85 to 90% of molars, you don't need a post because you can anchor your post-endodontic filling into these canal orifices. You can just remove 1 or 2 millimeter of guttapercha from the canal orifices and use those small pits to retain your restoration. If you have to put a post into a molar, never ever go into the smaller canals. Okay, the distal canal in lower molars and palatal canal in upper molars is the safest canal to put a post. Now you might be thinking, where should we put a post in a premolar? The straighter canal. Okay, when you do the root canal, you will get a sensation of which canal is straight and which is slightly curved. So the canal which is straighter, prefer that to put a post. Okay. So, and don't go in and put a post into the mesial root of a for lower molar or a buccal root of an upper molar, because those are thin roots and you may easily perforate. Okay. In anterior teeth with considerable loss of tooth structure, you can consider a post, or if you are planning for a crown, because when you're doing a crown preparation, you're removing the cingulum from the anterior tooth. So in that case, it is better to have a post that anchors the core into the root canal of the tooth. Otherwise, a post is not indicated for anterior teeth. And in premolars, you know, the decision is always based on the amount of tooth structure, and you have to put a post on in the canal which is a straighter canal. Okay. Now, general guidelines, the number one guideline is, we have all been taught to use these piezo drills, and nowadays when you buy a kit with posts, you also get some drills with the posts. What they tell you is to use the drill into the root canal, to enlarge the root canal with the drill, and then to put their post into the root canal. What you're doing is, you are preparing the canal to, you are enlarging the canal to receive the post. Okay, but post space preparation should not be done. Post space preparation is completely prohibited. What you have to do is, see, like this is one case I did. I have not prepared any post space. The canal was prepared for endodontic treatment, and since I follow a warm vertical obturation method, I just filled till here. I did not backfill the canal, and this is my post space. It is in continuity with the outline of the canal. Okay, another case, this is a molar. The post is going into the distal canal. The root canal outline is continuous. The post space and the obturation is continuous with each other. I have not enlarged this part more than what is needed. So this is after the post has been put in. What if you do a post space preparation? See, there is a risk of perforating here in this part. It's called a strip perforation. Okay, so that is why we tell you not to do a post space preparation. What you have to do is, you have to find a post that fits the canal dimension. Okay, so which means that you have to have different sizes of post available in your clinic, so that when you have a canal, if you have a large canal, you have to have a large post that fits the canal. If you have a very tiny canal, you have to have a tiny post that fits the canal. And in case of fiber post, you can even modify the post slightly, by grinding with your diamond burr, so that it becomes slimmer and it fits into a very tiny, slender canal. Okay, never ever enlarge a root canal to fit the size of the post that you have. Okay. Now, another guideline is to have a minimum of 4 millimeter of guttapercha apical to the post. Okay, this is to not to disturb the apical seal. Then the apical end of the post should extend apical to the crest of the alveolar bone. What does that mean? Again, let me come back to the picture I showed you earlier. This is the crest of the alveolar bone, and the apical end of the post should be apical to the crest of the alveolar bone. Otherwise, all the torquing force will be concentrated in the region of the alveolar bone, and this can actually lead to failure. So wherever your alveolar bone is, now this case doesn't have a lot of recession. It does have some recession. Suppose the alveolar crest is over here, then my post would have to go till here. And even after that, I will have around 4 millimeter of guttapercha left as my apical seal. Okay, so this is what I mean by that point. Now, coming to the question that we have believed in, this was our faith that a post strengthens the tooth structure. cemented posts, that is whatever your metal posts, your carbon posts, your titanium posts, none of them strengthen the root. Okay, none of them. Bonded posts, that is your fiber posts, they have a reinforcing effect initially because of the the bonding effect of the resin composite and the post to the dentine, but it is lost over time because the teeth are always being used to chew. So that cyclic action uh, causes the post to lose that strengthening effect. Okay, so our belief that the post strengthens the tooth is misplaced. We have to take it out of our minds. The post is meant only and only to retain a core, and that is the only function of the post. So use the post only whenever necessary. Okay, you don't need a post in all cases in which a root canal has been done. Now there are different types of pores. We have read this in all our textbooks. Active pores versus passive pores. Active pores are those screw-in pores which you screw into the root canal. So these are more retentive. At the same time, they cause more of root fractures. Okay. So passive pores are what we should prefer. We should be cementing or bonding them in. Okay. Now coming to parallel and tapered pores. Parallel pores, obviously they have more of a retentive action. But then the root canal is tapered. So that is why people started preferring tapered posts. But tapered post, it is believed that, the taper and then there is the tip. So all the force that is transmitted onto a post is concentrated at the tip, and it can tend to cause a fracture of the root at the level of the tip of the post. So nowadays, the posts that are coming in have they don't have a sharp tip. They are parallel in the coronal part, and then they taper, and then they don't have a tip. There is a platform kind of thing at the end of the post. So that is about the shape of the post. Then you have prefabricated post and custom cast post. With prefabricated post, it becomes a single visit procedure, and with a custom cast post, you need to involve another laboratory. You need to have an impression, another visit, another appointment for the patient. So this turns out to be expensive for the dentist and the patient. So that is why nowadays most of the posts are prefabricated. Again, in prefabricated posts, you have these zirconia and ceramic posts, which you can use, but they are very, very rigid. You cannot retrieve them. Once you put them in, that is the end of the story for the tooth. If at all anything happens, the tooth has to be extracted. And there are fiber reinforced posts, which are the most popular posts nowadays because of the progress in all this adhesive dentistry. Can be done in a single visit. They are aesthetic. You can give your aesthetic translucent crowns on top of this. So these are the ones that are the most popular nowadays. Now coming on to this custom cast post. This is a case I did during my post-graduation days. We don't need to do this kind of post nowadays in our clinical practice. So this is how you take an impression of the canal inside, and then you make a core also with this inlay casting wax, and this is what goes to the laboratory, and then it comes back in the shape of a post and core, and this is how it is on the X-ray. It is luted into the tooth, and then you do a crown preparation, and then the crowns are delivered. So this was done in the earlier days when bonding and adhesive dentistry was not so well developed, but nowadays you don't need to do this. You can go in with your fiber reinforced post. So suppose you have a tooth that is broken and it cannot retain a core by itself. See, this tooth cannot retain a core by itself. Then you put a fiber post in, and then you do a core build-up with the support of the post, and it has adequate ferrule. For anterior teeth, you need at least 2 millimeter circumferentially. So there is adequate ferrule, and then you deliver the crown, and the patient just needs to come for 2 visits. You do the post and core and the tooth preparation in 1 visit, and then you deliver the crown in the next visit. It becomes so easy. Another case, this was an apexification. Again, these teeth are very broken. Actually, it doesn't look like that. This tooth, especially the gingival limit, was very apical. And then you put large posts because this is a child. They have wide root canals. You put large posts, and in these wide root canals, fiber post and core is preferred because of its reinforcing action on the dentine. And then you do core. And for this child, I have not recommended crowns immediately because he's going to grow. And if we give a crown right now, obviously the gingiva is going to recede from the margin of the crown and it will show. So if he needs a crown, he can do it later. Anyway, there is a post inside and these composites look good enough. So this is another case. Now I'm going to show you a video of how a post is luted. See, here I did the etching and bonding, and you can see how clean the root canal is. This is the biggest factor why a fiber post fails. The canal has to be absolutely clean. Now, after your etching and bonding, you are putting in your dual cure resin cement. In this case, it is Paracord from Colteen. You can use any dual cure cement. And then you take any small, I prefer to do this, it's not necessary. If at all there are any air bubbles, you can just agitate a small instrument inside. And then you take a post in, put it there. Why is it yellow? Because I put on the yellow filter in my microscope. So that, you know, if it is a white light, the blue component of the white light will cause the cement to set. And then you just cure it through the post. This post, since it is a glass fiber reinforced post, the glass fibers will conduct some amount of light into the root canal where the resin cement can set with the help of the light. And anyway, even if the light does not reach there, this is a dual cure cement. That is, there is a self-cure component also for this cement. So it will cure by itself, provided enough time is given to the cement for setting. Then what you do, you just remove this stopper from here and you do a core buildup and you cut off whatever extra portion of the post is extending out from the post. So this is how you do a fiber post cementation. Now, there are several recommendations for the length of the post. Okay, some people say that the post length should be 3/4 of the root canal length. Then some people tell you that the post length should be equal to the crown height. For example, in a central incisor, the average height of a central incisor is around 10 millimeter. So 10 millimeter should be the length of the post that goes inside the root. Okay. Then another person says that whatever tooth it is, the post length should be 8 millimeter. Then this is another guideline which says that whatever the length of the tooth, the post, it should be apical to the crest of the bone. You can follow any of these or all of these guidelines. What is absolutely necessary is to have a minimum of 4 to 5 millimeter of gutta percha apical to the post. This is very important. So you can follow any of these, do whatever you want, but you should have this much of gutta percha left once you've done your post space preparation. Post space preparation, I told you not to enlarge the post using piezo drills. Then what can you do? You can remove your gutta percha using H files, or if you're doing a warm vertical compaction, yeah, you know, you just do the down pack, you don't do the backfill, and your post space is ready. Or you can use any heated instrument like a touch and heat to soften the gutta percha with your heat and remove little by little until you reach the length that you need for the post. So these are the methods that are recommended for safe post space preparation without over enlarging the root canal. Okay, what can you use to lute your post in? You can use any of your conventional zinc phosphate, glass ionomer, zinc polycarbonate cement, anything for your metal post. But for fiber post, resin cements are recommended because they leak less, they have a strengthening effect, and you know, like I told you, the root canals should be absolutely clean for the bonding to take place. So it is a bit technique sensitive, but if you do it in the correct way, the post won't come out. I have experienced this because, see, I had my pre-microscopic era and a post-microscopic era in my clinical practice. So in my pre-microscopic era, I have experienced one failure of fiber post, which I bonded, and the whole post and the core and the crown came out. The patient came to me holding the crown and the post in her hand. And what I believe why it failed is because, and the tooth was undamaged. Whatever tooth was left was absolutely undamaged. It was there. So I believe that my post space must not have been, 100% clean for that perfect bonding to take place. But once the microscope came in, I can see inside the root canal. The root canal is not a dark space. It is well lit, and I can see inside the root canal whether any gutta percha or any sealer remnant is there, and I can exactly go to that point and remove that bit of gutta percha from that point. And my root canal walls actually shine, they glisten, and that is how I can achieve perfect bonding for my fiber reinforced posts. And thank God, after I started doing my post and core under the microscope, none of them have failed yet. So maybe because the microscope has come in, I am able to see better. Maybe that is the reason they are not failing now. So yes, they are technique sensitive, but if done properly, they can stay for a long period of time. Now the post is done. Now coming up to core build-up materials. Okay. So basically, core build-up materials can be resin-based materials, your composites, your dual cure composites. There are so many dual cure materials coming in as specifically for core build-up. They give you excellent strength and they are dual cured. So you don't need to worry about whether the most apical part has been cured or not. It just cures by itself. So resin-based materials you can use to bond your post, any type of post usually. You can bond both your metal post and your fiber post with these dual cure materials. They are aesthetic, very aesthetic. They rely on bonding, but the problem is they have some sort of water sorption, which has been reduced considerably with the newer materials. Okay. So resin-based materials is one of the things that is recommended for core buildup in endodontically treated teeth. Then your granddad of all restorative materials, amalgam. Amalgam is excellent. See, there is no problem with amalgam. Some people fear mercury, but once it becomes amalgam, but that is, amalgam is an alloy of mercury. Once it becomes the amalgam, the release of mercury from the amalgam is negligible. Okay, so it has got excellent compressive strengths, very good mechanical properties. The problem is that it cannot be bonded. Okay, and you can do the crown preparation only after setting. With these kinds of materials, you just do a core buildup and you can do your tooth preparation immediately. This one, you have to send the patient back and call them back at least after 24 hours only. You can do the crown preparation. So it is unaesthetic. That is the biggest problem why we have moved away from amalgam, not because of mercury toxicity, but more because of its aesthetics and environmental concerns. How do you dispose the mercury? Those are the two biggest problems with amalgam, but otherwise it is still the best core build-up material. If you cannot handle composites in the presence of saliva and blood and moisture, go with amalgam. Okay. What is not recommended as a core buildup material? Your Cavit, your IRM, glass ionomer cement, resin modified glass ionomer cement, zirconia loaded glass ionomer cement, your Miracle Mix. No, none of these are perfect or permanent core buildup materials. Many of us do a lot of glass ionomer cement as our post and core, your core buildup material. And I don't know whether you have observed that whenever your failed crowns come to you, when the crown is broken and they come to you with the crown in their hand, if you look inside the crown, there will be some glass ionomer or your temporary zinc oxide eugenol or Cavit material inside that. And then there will be a lot of secondary caries inside the tooth. So the tooth becomes hollowed out inside the crown and then one day it just breaks off. Okay, all these materials leak. Okay, glass ionomer has got high solubility in oral fluids. So it does not remain as such in the oral cavity. Okay, the moment you put it in, it starts dissolving into the saliva. Slowly and slowly it dissolves, and there's a cavity for the bacteria to go in, and then they start the caries process inside the crown. The patient does not know. Even the dentist does not know. The patient comes to you, you take an X-ray, oh, everything is fine, because you can't see inside the crown. Okay, and there is a lot of caries going on inside, secondary caries going on inside all these materials, and one fine day, the crown just breaks. So these are not recommended. Better to go with one of these two materials. Okay. So this was one case. This lady had this, nobody will even accept this kind of a root canal these days. All the wrong things in this tooth. See, very thin, slender root canal preparations, 2% preparation, a metal screw post, and an amalgam filling. But you know how long this stayed in her mouth? 35 years. 35 years, and there was nothing wrong with this tooth. She came to me only because this part of the tooth broke off. Okay, that is usually because these amalgam cavities, they prepare them with undercuts, which weaken them, and but still it broke only after 35 years. All that I did, I just did tooth preparation for a crown, and I placed a crown there for her. Okay, rest everything that has been done has remained for 35 years. Look at the amount of pericervical dentine that is present. This, like, there is nothing wrong with amalgam or with slender preparations. That is what I want you to understand. Okay, many of the modern concepts have been promoted by different companies. I'm sorry to say that, and we are falling into that trap a lot of times. So this old kind of vintage dentistry, it still works. Okay, there's nothing wrong. You don't need to be fashionable to be a successful dentist. Now coming on to definitive restorations, that is whether to do crowns or not. See, anterior teeth with conservative axis and intact marginal ridges. The teeth that I showed you in the beginning, only with the incisal edges involved, the axis cavity. It doesn't need a crown, nor does it need a post. Okay, those kinds of anterior teeth. If the anterior tooth has discoloration, you will ask, what will you do if there is a discoloration? You just give a crown. There's no need for giving a crown. You do a bleaching process and the tooth will come back to its original color. Okay, you don't give a crown because with the crown preparation, you are taking away a lot of precious pericervical dentine, which cannot be replaced. Cannot be replaced ever. So crown preparation is not advised. It actually weakens the tooth. Suppose there is an aesthetic need for a veneer. Okay, you just can do a facial veneer. There is no need for a post. What you need to do is to get yourself trained in doing a veneer, and then you can confidently do a veneer. You are not confident because you have not done it. Start doing, get yourself trained for these procedures like bleaching and veneers, and you can confidently offer these better treatment options to your patients, get paid handsomely, and you don't miss not doing the crowns. Okay. Now, if there is loss of significant tooth structure, you have to do a crown. But if it is an anterior tooth, a post is preferred because when you're doing a crown preparation, you are weakening the tooth, and post will anchor the core inside. Now, moving on to posterior teeth. Again, if your tooth is good, if it has a nice strong tooth structure, then you just need a bonded composite restoration with beveled enamel margins and the tooth will be good to go. Something like this. Okay. So this one needs, why do I need to give a crown for this tooth? This tooth is strong enough. All the marginal ridges are intact. The cusps are all thicker than 2 millimeter in size. And if I do a crown preparation, that is what is going to weaken this tooth. So I just give a composite restoration. Maybe I can give her a fiber reinforced composite restoration. I can tell her, see, I have not put an ordinary composite inside. I put composite with glass fibers inside, which will prevent the propagation of cracks, and that is strengthen your tooth. And you can charge, as much as you charge for your profit for a crown, and you don't miss doing a crown. Okay, and it's easier. The patient has to come for lesser number of appointments, especially in this COVID era. You're trying to reduce the number of appointments. So you can think of doing such kind of dentistry, Now, if there is loss of tooth structure, especially in posterior teeth, it is recommended to give cuspal coverage. Now, cuspal coverage doesn't always mean crowns. It can also mean onlays or overlays. Okay. So now you have to start thinking in terms of onlays and overlays also, because the age of adhesive dentistry has come in. Suppose you have to do a crown. See, this is your traditional crown preparation with a chamfer margin all around. There is so much of pericervical dentine lost. Okay, all the flexing is going to, maybe it can weaken the tooth at this point, and one fine day it might break. In contrast to these kinds of margins, which are horizontal margins, now what is advocated by modern dentists is vertical margins. There is no finish line. There is no horizontal finish line over here. You just do a shoulderless preparation. Okay, you just do a shoulderless preparation. You retract the gingiva, you take an impression, and on the cast, you mark where you want the margin to be. And you tell your lab that you want a very fine knife-edged margin. You can either do this with your porcelain fused to metal PFM crowns or with metal-free zirconia crowns. Okay, zirconia also stays strong in these thin knife-edged preparations. So you can do both these crown margins, types of crowns for vertical preparation margins. So this is something called biologically oriented preparation technique or VertiPrep, which was introduced long back in the 60s, and then it lost popularity because there is no fixed margins. Nowadays, when you can take these photographs, there are so many ways to communicate with your lab. It has again gained popularity. Now this picture I have taken from Dr. Mazimu Mazza. Unfortunately, he's no more with us, but he was an excellent clinician, excellent the user of a microscope. You cannot even call him a microenterodontist because he used to do everything with a microscope. He used to do flap surgeries, impaction. I am still a great fan of him. And there is this article written by Dr. Mazza and so many other, dentists whom we respect. This is also freely available on the internet. If you're interested in this VertiPrep approach, you can download it and read it. There are some gray areas in this article. VertiPrep is not so easy to master because it has to go to the lab and come back, but then it is a good introduction. And then you can, obviously, if you're interested, you can go in for some training, and you have to have a good lab support. And then you can, start doing these preparations, which cause very little loss of, or not even little, there is no loss of pericervical dentine. Okay, so that is the advantage of this kinds of preparation. Then again, coming to cuspal coverage, I always used to wonder what is the difference between an onlay and an overlay. So this is one picture I took from the internet and then I modified it slightly. An inlay is one restoration. It is an indirect restoration that is bonded into the tooth, and it does not cover any cusp. It does not cap any cusp. Okay, that is an inlay. An onlay is a restoration, an indirect restoration that can cap any one or more cusps, but it does not cap all cusps. That is the difference between an onlay and an overlay. Overlay caps all the cusps. Okay. So an overlay is what is recommended for a tooth that is endodontically treated. You want to cap all the cusps, and this is a crown. All of us know what is a crown. It caps all the cusps, and then there is axial reduction also. So see, this was one tooth that came to me for a retreatment. There is a lot of periapical infection going on, but and there was significant loss of occlusal tooth structure. But the good thing about it is that this tooth has a lot of pericervical dentine length. So this tooth has hope of survival, So I told the patients that there is a good prognosis for this tooth. So I just did a retreatment, and there was a composite core. And this is how I got the tooth. And I did not do a tooth preparation. I did not take anything away from the tooth compared to how it came to me. I just eliminated all the undercuts, did an onlay preparation, and this is a composite onlay that was bonded onto the tooth, and this one is good to go. So this is what we can do. Otherwise, if I did a crown preparation, there is only this much height, and I would have lost whatever pericervical dentine is also there, and then this tooth wouldn't have much hope of surviving. This patient is a good friend of mine. She keeps coming in with her kids and all, and there is no problem with the tooth. This is more than, I think, 3 years, and it's still going strong, and I hope it does for a longer period of time. So this is how you do a onlay. Okay. So the basic principle still remains the same. This is one of my favorite quotes in dentistry, that perpetual preservation of what remains, whatever remains, is more important than the meticulous replacement of what is missing. So even though you do the best crown preparation in the world, if you're removing what remains, the healthy tissue that remains, then you are going away from one of the basic dictums of dentistry. Okay, this is a very old quote. Now coming to ferrule. Okay, when we talk about crowns, we always have to talk about ferrule. Ferrule means an iron bracelet. So ferrule is not on the tooth, ferrule is in the crown. Okay, ferrule is actually defined as an encircling band of cast metal around the coronal surface of the tooth. So ferrule is the metal that goes onto the tooth, and it is not the tooth structure. So it is better explained with this picture. Here there is a poston core done and the crown is coming in. So this one doesn't have any ferrule. Compare this to this one. See, there is a poston core, but there is also some amount of tooth structure that extends above the margin, the preparation margin. And when the crown comes in here, the crown can encircle this part of the tooth, and this is what forms the ferrule. So this one is going to stay longer than this. Okay, that is what a ferrule is, and it is very important. So when you talk about ferrule, the ferrule height is important. So we have been taught that there should be at least 2 millimeter or a minimum of 1.5 millimeter for posteriors, 2 millimeter for anteriors, the height of the ferrule. Okay. The width of the ferrule. What is the width of the ferrule? That is the distance between the root canal orifice margins and the external surface of the tooth. That is the ferrule width, which should be a minimum of 1 millimeter. Okay, 1 millimeter width should be there. 1.5 for posteriors and 2 millimeter for anteriors. Height should be there. Now the number of walls for the ferrule. Okay, ideally you should have 4 walls for the ferrule: mesial, distal, buccal, and lingual. Less ideally you can even have 3 walls for the ferrule, but 2 and less than 2 walls for a ferrule compromises the case. Okay, the location of the ferrule, that is, where is it located, anteriorly in the mouth or posteriorly in the mouth, and the extent of lateral loads. Both these determine the strength of the tooth. Okay, then there is a classification for the ferrule depending on the height and all these things. Class 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is the worst prognosis and 1 is the best prognosis. If you want to know more about all this, you can read this article in the British Dental Journal, and this is also freely available on the internet. Now, suppose you don't have an ideal ferrule, you have a compromised ferrule, you don't have 4 walls, you don't even have 2 walls. What can you do? So there are 2 methods how you can increase ferrule for a tooth. One is crown lengthening and the other is orthodontic extrusion. Okay. Crown lengthening is surgical procedure, something like this. You get your periodontist to do this. Basically, the gingival tissue and the alveolar bone is repositioned apically so that more of the tooth structure is available for us, and this gives you a ferrule for giving a new crown for this tooth. But provided you have adequate root length, okay, the crown root ratio shouldn't reverse. The crown can never be longer than the root, okay. And this is orthodontic extrusion. This can also be done. It takes a little bit more time. You can extrude the tooth using orthodontic forces, and then after extrusion, usually what happens is the gingiva will migrate along with the tooth root. So you will have to do some sort of surgical crown lengthening also after orthodontic extrusion. So now moving on to biologic width. Okay, what is biologic width? Going back to our perio classes, biologic width is basically where these periodontal tissues are attached to the tooth root. Okay, so there has to be 1 millimeter for attachment of the connective tissue, and then there has to be 1 millimeter for attachment of the junctional epithelium or epithelial attachment. Okay, so and then you have this sulcus depth that is also 1 millimeter. So when you take an X-ray, you cannot see all these soft tissues in the X-ray. Okay, so what you can measure is the hard tissues. So you look at the level of the alveolar bone, and you have to see where your restoration margin. Suppose there is a deep subgingival decay, and the margin of the restoration is going to come here. So you have to measure from here to the alveolar crest how much it is. If it is only 1 millimeter, then you have to go in for some surgical procedure where you have to reposition the alveolar crest from here to here. Okay, you need to have a 2 millimeter difference between your restoration margin and the alveolar crest. You go more than 2 millimeter, you are violating the biological width, And how do the tissues react? They either react with a chronic inflammation. See, these crowns have been given subgingival margins and there is chronic inflammation over here, or they can react with recession. Okay, recession can happen. And if it's in the anterior region, it looks very unaesthetic. So the clinical significance of biological width is where you're going to position your margins of your restoration. And if you're doing a surgical repositioning of the tissues, you need to know where you have to position the tissue in relation to the restoration that is going to come in. So basically, we can say that you need total of 4.5 millimeter tooth structure above the alveolar crest. As I told you, you have to measure on the X-ray. You can only measure hard tissues on the X-ray. So you look at the level of the alveolar crest, and above that, you need 1 millimeter of connective tissue, 1 millimeter of the junctional epithelium, 1 millimeter of sulcular depth, and 1.5 millimeter of ferrule. So this is what usually is needed. But nowadays, a lot of good mattressing systems and these VertiPrep techniques have come in, wherein you are allowed to invade the biological width, and you have to ensure that the margins are absolutely smooth and flush with the tooth structure. And in that case, it stays without inflammation. Okay, so these are all newer concepts, but basically for us general dentists, this is an easy thing to remember. Above the alveolar crest, if you have 4.5 millimeter of tooth structure, you can confidently go in with any kind of restoration. Your filling, crown, inlay, onlay, whatever. Okay, now if you are planning subgingival margins, for example, in this case, these are all temporary crowns, they have been cemented, and then you open a flap and then you can measure with your periodontal probe that whether it is 2 millimeter away from the alveolar crest or not. So this is 2 millimeter. If you want it is only 1 millimeter, you can reposition the alveolar crest and then suture the soft tissues back, and then the tissues will react favorably to your treatment. Now that is the end of my concepts that I was presenting to you. Let us move on to CCD, not charged couple device. CCD is clinical case discussion. Just a few cases. This is the case I showed you initially. So what I wanted to say is I did not give a crown for this patient. Actually, a lot of these kinds of patients comes to me. They are above 60 years or above 70 years of age, and they get these root caries. Okay, because there is a lot of gingival recession happening. So this patient's whole periodontal condition is compromised. He is on periodontal therapy also, and they have these caries. They have lost other teeth. There is significant tooth loss. They just see this is the only tooth which he is using for chewing on the left side. So he asked me to save this tooth for him. I asked him to extract, but I said, your periodontal support is not good enough. He said, doctor, it will do. I am happy with as long as it stays. You just save this tooth for me because this is the only tooth I'm using for chewing. So I didn't want to weaken this further with giving a crown. I just did a smallest access cavity preparation I could do, and I restored both the proximal cavities separately. I have not given a crown, and it is staying in the patient's mouth. He is happily chewing with it. Provided the periodontal tissues stay stable, he can go on chewing with it, because a crown preparation is going to further weaken its tooth, and the crown has some weight. I believe you must have observed this crown, when it is made of metal, ceramic, or even zirconia, it has some weight. You take it in your hand, it has some weight. And if you're putting that crown onto this tooth, this periodontium has to bear the weight of the crown also. So it is overloading this already sick periodontium. That is why I did not put a crown for this tooth, and it is okay now. Again, another case of root caries. See, the occlusal surface of the tooth is absolutely fine. There is no problem with that. The caries is over here. Again, this is an old patient. There is a lot of gingival recession. The embrasures are open. The food gets stuck. Even though you tell them to brush with interdental brush, most of them don't do it every day. There is root caries. The patient doesn't even know there is a cavity there. They come to you with pain, and you locate the cavity. And then what did I do? Similarly, I did a very tiny access preparation, and then I restored the caries separately. So if you had observed, there is caries also in this tooth, in the third molar. So I restored that also. So that is what you see here, the restorations with amalgam. Because amalgam is, I did not, involve the marginal ridge or anything, because if I remove the marginal ridge, the tooth would lose a significant amount of its stiffness. I just cleaned the caries through this open embrasure that was there and just condensed amalgam, and I could carve it out because of the property of the amalgam. It can be carved. Okay, and there is compromised isolation, no problem. Amalgam fares well in such situations. So actually, for me, I have not discarded amalgam in my practice even now, because I find some indications for amalgam in these kinds of cases. And as long as another material comes which can replace amalgam, that is, which something that does not contain mercury, but something that can be condensed and packed and carved like amalgam, and something that seals like amalgam comes, till then I'm going to use it. Or like some other countries, if it becomes legally banned to use in India, till that point of time, I am going to find uses for amalgam in my practice. So this is the X-ray. See, there is some overhang which I saw in the X-ray, and this was removed later. And the access cavity preparation is over here. I have just not removed anything else. I have preserved what was present. I just treated the sick tissue, and the rest of it is as it came to me. I did not do a crown preparation for this tooth, because a crown would not have strengthened this tooth at all. Okay, so this is also staying well, and I know it's going to fail because of periodontal issues, but till then it is there in the patient's mouth. And these old patients, they just want to extend the life of their teeth for as long as possible. They are not highly demanding patients. Even they know that their dentition is compromised. So we can provide this kind of minimally invasive solutions to our patients. Okay, and now coming to the end of the whole thing, I hope at least some of the audience still remains. I can't see how many are there. Anyway, you can follow me on Facebook. I have been there on Facebook for a long time. Recently joined Insta, so you can join my. This is my clinic page, or even my name. The account is also there, and we do conduct very minimally priced courses, digital webinars like this for our dental friends. We have, this is my friend Dr. Vijit. He and me, both of us together as a team, we conduct some classes for our colleagues. If any of you is interested, you can, WhatsApp me. So these are some topics that we have covered till now. We have done veneers, then rotary endodontics, pain management, irrigation, obturation, rubber dam, like this. So we keep doing these. You can contact me at my email or WhatsApp me. I'm so glad that you all joined me on a Sunday and listen to me. I don't know how much value I could provide to your time, but I can assure you that I tried my best to share with you the modern concepts of post-endodontic restorations and how we can provide better solutions to our patients with our skill. And this is how I used to practice before the COVID era. Now after COVID, everything is covered. Even you cannot see me. This is one photo that is my set thank you slide. So I just included it here. Thank you all for being with me, for listening to me, for bearing with me. Thank you, IDS CKK. Thank you, WBC. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Liba. Now we'll take few questions.
Yeah, sure.
Participants can could text or inbox will be added into the inbox. I think we have few messages, right?
So you can check the Q&A. We have few questions from various participants.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see the Q&A. One is, in case of RCT treated anterior teeth has discoloration because of fluorosis only on labial surface, can we do direct composite veneering in such case? Yes, you can do. No problem. in premolar post should be placed in which canal? The straighter canal. Whichever canal is straight, in that canal the post should go. And ma'am, for orifice barrier, can we use RMGIC? Yes, we can use. There is no problem. Yeah, you can use, doctor. Can you please elaborate the process of custom cast post? I did show you those pictures. Basically, you have to take an impression with inlay casting wax using a wire or something to support that wax. And then once you have a smooth impression, then you can build a small core kind of thing using the same wax, and then you can send it to the lab. The lab will send you the post in whatever material you prefer. You can ask for, there are so many, they even provide you ceramic custom cast post. So the lab will provide you the post and you lute it into the post space. Then the RCT treated anterior tooth which has fluorosis, then should it be given crown or can we do composite veneering? Depends on how much of enamel is available for bonding. If you have a good amount of enamel, then you can do composite veneering or even ceramic veneering. If there is no enamel, like in cases of amelogenesis imperfecta or even dentinogenesis imperfecta, where the enamel is healthy but it just chips off from the tooth, then you have to go for a crown. For cast post, if post space preparation is not done, then impression taking would be difficult. Yes, difficult. Usually we do cast post in large root canals, not in very narrow, tiny root canals. Can we give inlay in endodontically treated teeth? If not, then why? Inlays actually have a wedging action. If you are giving an indirect restoration in an endodontically treated posterior tooth, it has to cover all the cusps. So inlay basically doesn't cover any cusp, so you cannot give an inlay, and it also has a wedging action which can predispose the tooth to fracture. Again, Arpita, which has better long-term prognosis for anterior teeth, cast metal or fiber post? Nowadays, people do more of fiber post because of the improved material chemistry that we have and the improved technology that we have, and they fail less. Even if fiber posts fail, they fail more favorably. Okay, and cast post, you go for a cast post only when you have to change the angulation of the tooth, or you have multiple teeth where a post and core is needed. So instead of doing fiber post and core bonding for each tooth, you can just take an impression and you can send it to the lab so that everything comes back to you together. Or if you have to change the angulation of the tooth, suppose you have a procline tooth and you want the core to go more lingually, then you can do a fiber post, a cast post for that tooth. Okay, so there is no better in these things. It has to be on a case-to-case basis. Then, how do you do subgingival proximal caries restoration without raising flap? The one you showed with amalgam. How do you get access? Actually, that there was a pocket and the embrasure was open. I could access that area without doing a flap. You can't do it in all cases. Sometimes you need to trim the gingiva, but this was, you could do it like that. Can you explain orifice barrier? Orifice barrier is when you don't have time to do a permanent restoration after obturation, you just seal the orifices, okay? You etch the floor of the your access cavity after obturation. So the gutta percha is there inside the root canals. You etch the floor of the access cavity, you apply bonding agent, and you then apply a little bit of flowable composite on all the orifices. So the orifices are sealed. And then on top of that, you put a temporary filling and you send the patient. The patient will come back on another appointment to complete the restoration. But till then, there is no leakage into the root canals. Okay. How to clean post space? A clean post space is that in which there is no gutta percha and sealer. So you have to ensure that you remove all of these obturating materials from the post space, and then after that you can rinse with EDTA if you want, so that all the sphere layer is again removed, and then you do your normal bonding. Which was the conservative access cavity technique which you mentioned? I don't know, doctor, what you mean. Just a small access cavity. That is the conservative access. I showed you some pictures. That only. Which would be preferable material for post-tender restoration when we don't give a crown? Composite, nowadays we all do composites only, na? If the tooth margin is below the cervical gingiva, can it be saved by doing crown lengthening, or is the prognosis very poor? No, there are so many methods nowadays to restore subgingival margins. There is something called deep margin elevation, and then if you want, you can do a flap elevation. You can do surgical crown lengthening. There are so many methods, and the prognosis doesn't become very poor. Dr. Mridula, in case of inlays, if adjacent teeth is also missing, what will be the treatment plan? See, basically in post-endodontic restorations, we don't do inlays because post-endodontic restorations are supposed to cover all the cusps. So we don't do inlays. Is a metal post better option in posterior teeth? No, we can't say like that. You can put in metal posts in posterior teeth, but it always has to be cemented, not screwed in. Fiber posts will also do. Some people do prefer metal posts in posterior teeth because of its rigidity, but everything depends on the dentine that is remaining and the gutta-percha that remains apical to the post. You can do metal posts in posterior teeth. No contraindication as such. Is orifice barrier technique. In orifice barrier technique, when you etch and wash, won't the canal be contaminated with water? No. That's okay. That contamination is better than bacterial contamination. How many posts needed for molars? Usually one. The largest canal, one post, that is enough. For vertebrate, how steps will change for lab guy? They hardly understand finish lines. This is one big challenge. You have to find a lab technician who understands you and who is interested to learn with you. What is the recommended magnification in loops for RCT? Depends on what you're comfortable with. Initially, if you go with a 6x loop, you won't be able to do anything. So you can have anything for a beginner, you can have anything above 2.5, and then if you want, you can increase. But loops will never, substitute for a microscope. Microscope is the king, and the loops can be, the Photias or something. That's all. Because microscope also gives you ergonomics along with magnification, which the loops cannot give. Do we need to use endodontic microscope for close placement even? Everything becomes better with a microscope because you can see everything. Okay. If you ask me if you need, no, you don't need. You can also do it without a microscope. But if you need perfection, then yes, nothing beats the microscope. Senior doctor, in case of vertical fracture of premolar and loss of palatal part, should we place a post? Yes, doctor. In such cases, post is needed. How do you manage deep subgingival post observation? That is a different topic altogether, doctor. You have, like I mentioned before also, there are different techniques to manage deep margins. That applies, it's not even for post-endodontic restorations. For any subgingival margins, the same principles apply. Isolation has to be there, the margin has to be isolated, how you manage the soft tissue, all these are there. In case of lingual cusp is gone, and if it is a curved canal, which canal should be placed a post in case of a premolar? You can place it in the buccal canal. It just needs to anchor the core, and then if needed, you do a crown lengthening on the lingual side, okay, so that you can grab the lingual root surface, so that you can achieve a ferrule over there. Is direct composite cuspal coverage as successful as crown? Yeah, it works. Like if you have a patient, we get a lot of these NRIs in Kerala. They come in for 1 week or they come in for 1 month, but they'll come to you only 2 days before they leave for their country. So you do the root canal. The patient tells you that he doesn't have time for a crown. You give a complete cuspal coverage. You reduce all the cusps and you cover them all with composite, and it will stay for 1 or 2 years till the patient comes back. But you have to tell them that this is not a permanent solution, and indirect restoration is stronger. Of course, it is stronger than your layers of composite that you use. Okay. Do screw posts cause microcaps? Yes, they do. If you are putting a screw post in, just cement it in. Okay, then it won't cause a microcrack. Is fiber post better in this aspect? Yes. When you look at the microcracks, yes. Any tips on doing ground lengthening by some burrs? How is you can do it with burr, blade, electrocautery, laser, whatever you have, you can do it. For a case of epexification, I had given a apical plug by using MPA 45. Now can I proceed cast post without GP obturation? Working like this 22 minutes. Yeah, you can do a cast post, but better will be a fiber post because a cast post will have a wedging action, and if it fails, it will fracture the root. On the other side, if you give a fiber post, it will have a reinforcing action on the root canal walls, and if it fails, it will fail more coronally so that you can repeat the post and growth, and the tooth will stay. Okay, you don't need GP in between. If we have adequate tooth structure and dentine for bonding, can we go for inlay? No inlays, no inlays, only overlays or crowns for posteriors. Is there any classification or easy tip to decide chair side whether a specific tooth go for crown or composite? If you have all the walls and marginal ridges, you can do composite. Okay. Otherwise, if there is loss of tooth structure, if only two cusps are lost, you can maybe do a onlay. Otherwise, you have to go for a crown. Rekha Prabhu. Oh, my Endovision family. Oh, Endovision, whoever is there, a big hi to you all for joining us. We'll soon be coming back with our regular Endovision sessions. Okay. Thank you all who all are here. Rekha doctor, especially you. When we do a deep margin elevation and keep a bonded restoration, won't the margin lie on composite rather than enamel? See, when you do a deep margin elevation, you have already worked hard to get a perfect seal in that deep margin area. So when you do a crown or an onlay, you can keep your margin short of that deep margin. Okay, you will be supragingival, and it will work fine because your margin is well sealed. Otherwise, if you are giving a crown, you have to do a vertiprep and go subgingival apical to your deep margin so that your margins are on tooth structure. But anyway, if you are giving an onlay, your onlay is always supragingival. So that doesn't matter actually. If your deep margin elevation is perfect, any sort of margin is fine. Just don't keep your margin of your crown at the level of the deep margin. Okay, either below it or above. How can you excavate deep plastic cavity without breaking? Are you asking about that amalgam case? Oh, that one we can do. It was far away from the marginal ridge. I used a long round burr and then spoon excavator. Is post need silane application? Yes, yes. You have to apply silane on the post. Instead of post, can we push some amalgam 1 to 2 millimeter deep? Yeah, higher post. That is an accepted technique. Yes, we can do it. In case of inlays, if adjacent teeth is also missing, what will be the treatment? No inlays, only overlays and crowns. Are these questions coming back? Like, is it like a cycle or am I going down only? Is this coming round and round? No, no. Which access cavity preparation is better, calla lily or truss? Calla lily. Truss and all, they are just fashion. For doing a truss access cavity without errors, you need a high level of skill and magnification, and still you can go wrong. Calla lily is better and safer, in my opinion. What are the different ways of crown lengthening? Crown lengthening, lots of ways. Burr, blade, whether it has to be surgical or not, laser, so many others. Deep margin elevation, since there is no enamel at that point, won't a composite leak? No, dentine bonding agents are there now. It will bond to dentine. Only thing is you need to have perfect isolation so that it bonds to dentine. Which fiber post? Usually I use fiber post from Ivoclar, but I've used Tinax from Coltine also. They are also good. Angelus post, they are also good. Basically, I feel your technique matters more than the brand. core builder material and access cavity restoration. Yes. The affordable microscope. I am using Labomed Prima, and that is what seemed affordable to me at the point when I wanted to buy a microscope. There are so many available in the market nowadays. You just take quotes from all the dealers and then you can decide. Best method of crown lengthening. Always best is done by a periodontist. So have a periodontist in your team. How to clean. You can use EDTA. In weaker tooth structure, crown preparation without margin is suggested to preserve the tooth structure. Yes, to preserve the cervical tooth structure, peri-cervical tooth structure. Something here will carry there is overhanging restoration. Yes, it will irritate. So we have to remove all the overhangs. So we have to take an X-ray after each and every class 2 restoration that we do to see if there is an overhang and then remove it. Okay, done with the questions.
I guess no more questions. Okay.
Some
more
questions
questions?
are there in the chat also.
Okay.
Oh, these are suggestions for our future webinars.
Okay, that is there. And when you go above, some questions are there. I mean, for core build-up, which material do you use?
Core build-up amalgam or composite or your specific core build-up materials like Paracore or Luxacore, whatever.
Which is
Not-
the best? Okay. Yeah, ma'am.
Not GIC.
Then which is the best system for removal of fiber post?
Fiber post diamond work. You wet it and you follow, you can see the post and then you have to remove it. Diamond work.
Then how to do bleaching after RCT in anteriors?
That is a different topic altogether. Hopefully we'll soon have a session on bleaching and then we can discuss bleaching.
Okay. Then for case of apacification, I have given an apical plug by using MTA 4 to 5 millimeter. Can I proceed the case with cast post without?
Yeah, this we had answered. We had answered it from the Q&A.
Okay. Then what is the recommended magnification in loops for RCT?
This also was discussed.
Okay. Then in case of inlays, if adjacent teeth is also missing, what will be the treatment plan?
Yeah, I had discussed this.
Discuss
Came up,
that.
yeah, many times. We are not discussing inlays because inlays are not post-endodontic restoration.
Okay, I
Inlays
guess
don't
that's
cover
it.
any cusps.
How to
Okay.
clean post space in root canal before bonding post?
We have to make sure that we've removed all the guttapercha and sealer and then we can rinse the post space with EDTA.
Okay. Is post need silane application?
Yes, this we had answered in the Q&A.
Okay, that's it. That's all.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Liba. Before going to the voter thanks, I'd like to invite the online platform for today's webinar was provided by MedPiper. They are a Bangalore-based organization doing Zoom platform and medical recruitment exclusively for medical professionals only. So the regional heads, Snidha Serene and Ms. Saumya, they both are here, and like them to speak a few words. Snidha,
Okay, thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor. First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. I mean, we are getting such a big platform to interact with all these doctors, so that's a huge opportunity for us. So as you said, our name is MedPiper Technologies Private Limited. So we are basically an online platform where doctors and hospitals can interact with each other. We are creating a solution for an end-to-end recruitment platform. So doctors will be there, hospitals will be there, they can interact and the recruitment will be done much more easily. So that's what we plan also for doctors and other healthcare professionals are there. So also we are having a blog called Med Today. So we'll be coming up with many articles. You can publish articles over there once it is done. So that's what we basically do. So do check on our platform. I will leave the website ID in the chat. So that's it. And Dr. Liba, the section was really fantastic. Though I couldn't follow anything on the technical terms, but still, it's really great pleasure to hear someone speaking from their experience. I mean, there's such a kind of authenticity will be there, right? So that was really interesting to hear. And what you said, I mean, preservation is better than what, rather than removing something entirely, preservation is better. That was really, I mean, even in our current scenario, it's really nice to hear. It was really good to listen to someone speaking from experience. It's always good to listen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, Dr. Nitin. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Please do check on our platform, and I hope it will be of useful for you. It will be of use to you. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sridhar and Soumya.
And one more thing, sir, for certificates, you can call, I mean, WhatsApp the details. I'm just, I have got many messages. So it's to number 73064957769 for
Sure,
certificates.
I'll be added. I'll add that to the group also.
Okay, sure. Okay, fine. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sridhar. So, firstly, I'd like to thank Dr. Liba for a very excellent section. I know you are a very busy person in your private practice and other things. And in spite of the very short notice, I mean, last week only we communicated with you, and without any hesitation, you said yes, and thanks a lot. It was a very wonderful section, and we're looking forward more and more CDs in the future from you.
Oh yeah, sure. Anything for CKK.
Thank our President, Dr. Angeshi, for all the support. He was behind the scene. Thank you, Dr. Angeshi.
Thank you.
Then the man behind the show, Dr. Nitin Pratap. He's a very silent person. He hardly speaks anything, but his action speaks a lot. He's he's very calm and quiet, but he's always behind the scene. And thank you, Dr. Nitin, for your efforts. I have to especially thank Dr. WDC, IDSCKK representative, Dr. Veena and Bhaglashmi. And they were like right from the word go. They shared in all the groups. Actually, I was expecting from registration from Kerala to a certain extent South India, but I was really surprised to see a lot of registration across the country. In fact, from abroad also, from Dubai and all. And have to say thank you, Veena and Bhaglashmi, for the wonderful canvassing and supporting. Bhaglashmi is here, right? She came. She participated. She was here.
Yeah, she was there.
Yeah,
Thank
she
you,
was
Veena
there.
and Bhaglashmi.
You're welcome.
Once again, I would like to thank MedPiper also, and we looking forward for our coming webinars also associated with you. Then thank you all the members who have participated. We have another webinar coming up next Sunday by Liba's friend, Dr. Vijit Vadia, about composites and tips and tricks in composites. Next
Yeah,
Sunday.
I forgot to mention that I had told him I will promote his webinar during my webinar. Actually, Vijit is excellent in composites. Basically, I am very bad with composites, but he is like, I look up to him and his composite cases. Beautiful. You won't even know which is the restoration and which is the tooth. It's a must attend for everybody.
Looking forward.
Yeah. Even I am looking forward.
Coming Sunday, November 8th, 11 a.m. So looking forward for the program, and the members can register through our group, the same WhatsApp group. And once again, on behalf of IDSCKK branch, I'd like to thank each and every member who participated for a webinar, and each and everyone, especially Dr. Liba, for a wonderful session, and looking forward for more future webinars. Thank you all.